In this video, I'm going to talk about how to draw eyes, both with pencil and with Sharpie. To the top left, you can see a realistic kind of eye drawing, and none of this is with reference photos, it's just to demonstrate how to do it. You can see the little suns that I drew on most of the pictures to show where the lighting's coming from, and that's important for more the last step, especially with pencil. With pencil, there's a lot of smearing techniques. You can use your finger, you can use paper, you can use professional tools for that. But this is kind of just to demonstrate what to do with these. In the right below the eye of the pencil drawing, you can see like just the iris that I did. The way you're supposed to draw irises is you can just draw a circle, light one, and you have to find out where you want the pupil placed, which is in the center. If you place it anywhere else, it just looks weird. And then the technique that you use is hatching, but you have to do it in a motion in which it's rounded from the iris to the edge of the eye. And then you can see that once that first layer is done, you want to go over it a couple times, depending on how light or dark the eye is. And usually eyes, unless the reference photo doesn't have that, they have a dark outline around the eye. You can emphasize that by deepening the circle line and then deepening the hatching in short little bursts. And sometimes the eye has a little center before the iris, and you can darken that with like little hatch lines around the iris, and that makes the eye a little bit more interesting too. You can see that more in the first drawing that I did for the eye. Now the bottom two shape eyes, I wanted to demonstrate like more of a feminine eye and more of a masculine eye and what that means in drawing. First of all, the major oval shape around it is to show you like the shape of an eye, and if you're drawing it on a face, usually there's with the line across the face, there's 6 of them, and the second 2 of them are the ones that you draw. I'll demonstrate that in another video. With the first eye, the more feminine one, lines technically are more rounded. And this depends also if you want to do it on a reference photo. This is more for abstract drawing. There's less harsh lines usually on female eyes, and especially in like the folds above their eyes and below their eyes, it's more of a curve, as to where in the second one they're a little bit more sharp eyes. As an example, in this case, with like this more masculine eye, they tend to have an overlap on the top of their eyelid, in which makes them look more masculine. With Sharpie drawings, especially if you're using Sharpie and not a regular like artist pen, it tends to be a lot more heavily dense in line work, so you have to be really careful like how long you press the Sharpie down. I did it with Sharpie. I have other pens for this, but this is just to like beginner's level, like if you're just practicing. In the first eye, like the finished eye, the left right next to the eye that's unfinished, that's kind of what I would do, especially with a Sharpie. You kind of have 2 choices with like texture for the eye, and you can see that under my verses, and that's dots or hatch lines. Especially with a Sharpie, it's hard to do hatch lines, especially since it bleeds so much. And you can see that kind of issue going on with the drawing. Right across from that drawing is like an unfinished eye, just to give you like the overall shape of what that's supposed to look like with a Sharpie, because it's kind of blended out more with the hatch lines and the dots. Right below that, I wanted to give like an example of what it would be like if you didn't draw the lighting for the eye. With the lighting for the eye, it kind of gives the eye a little bit more life, but it depends on what kind of drawing you're going to do. If you want to make it look more intense, there's less light usually, or more light, depending on what kind of scene you're trying to describe. But I feel like the texture for the eye is one of the most important, especially with Sharpie. That's why I gave like a little example. With hatch lines, it's a little bit harder to give character to the eye. And below that texture example, I gave a placement example of where to put the eye, like center. I gave one with a really intense look to it that you can't see a lot of the eye. And that's kind of unnatural in the world, but if you're doing a drawing that's less realistic, it's definitely a little bit more interesting. But if you're just looking down regularly, the second option is a little bit more realistic. And more of a beginner kind of problem I've seen is when people place the eye center, they place it either a little too off of where they're trying to go. So it's important to notice with an eye, you're going to see either the top or the bottom for the most part. If you're looking up, sideways, wherever, you'll never see like a whole circle unless the eyes are enlarged. So in the example, I gave a little too far off of the eye versus like what it would be like if you were looking to the left or right. And it's important to make that distinction because you want it to look believable for the audience. The whole point of drawing eyes is to make it kind of a believable look. Now, this depends on style and everything like that. This is just an example if for more realistic eyes. You can also transfer this to comics and stuff like that. But eyes are definitely one of the most important things to draw correctly, because if you don't draw them right, then it confuses the whole image.